Hello and welcome to the newsroom with Sana. Today we're going to take a look at a number of different stories that are being shaped in the international community. First is, of course, what is happening between Iran and the United States. This is very important, particularly as part of the kind of developments that have taken place now with the protests in Iran and the possibilities of foreign intervention also coming in strong, with multiple countries eyeing the situation closely, and especially with the U.S. also talking about how all options are on the table. The UN Security Council meeting that had been called by the US is also important with reference to what it is that the countries are looking at in terms of the situation and developments, where we of course also saw exchanges taking place between the representatives of Iran and the United States. But also important is the fact that how exactly will this transpire in terms of the actual situation on ground. It seems that the earlier harsh stances coming in have been toned down a little from both sides, and it seems that there might be a possibility for diplomatic action to take place. However, the US has made it very, very clear that it will not stop short of any action to be taken which it deems necessary. So we're going to take a look at that in our first segment of the show. The next one, we're going to take a look at what is happening in Afghanistan, with reports coming out of what is happening between Kandahar and Kabul and the kind of rift that exists between the Taliban leadership emerging in Kandahar and the one that is emerging in Kabul. And it seemed that a lot of this were reports that had come out earlier, but a recent audio coming out and reported by the BBC has also pointed towards these sharp fault lines between the two factions, and what that means in terms of the actions potentially that both Kandahar and Kabul could take. Although many experts say that perhaps there won't be an all-out action that is taken against Akhundzada in Kandahar, but whether or not that is going to be a way forward for the Afghan Taliban regime, will that even be on the table, and how else will they be able to negotiate the kind of power dynamics that currently exist, with many claiming that the actual show is being run from Kandahar, remains to be seen. And lastly, we're going to take a look at what is happening in Gaza, with the United States announcing the second phase of the ceasefire. A lot in terms of what was required as part of the first phase has still not been achieved. And because of that, it seems that there is a lot of suspicion as to whether or not the second phase can truly be put in at this point in time without an effective ceasefire in place, without complete movements with regards to the Israel withdrawal that was also agreed upon, and of course other such actions, including the movement of trade that is being allowed inside the Gaza territory. And this is of course also essential in terms of what we see happening, as Mr. Trump has announced a technocratic committee that is going to look at the administrative measures of Gaza. And this 15-member body is going to be important in highlighting and understanding the situation on ground, and whether or not then it can move towards true demilitarization and a reconstruction, which is part of the second phase of this peace plan. So it remains to be seen whether or not that in fact will be followed. We're going to start off with a first segment that look at what's happening between Iran and the United States. For that, we've been joined by Hussain Baqeri, who's the Iran regional expert. Thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the show. Mr. Hussain, I'd like your perspective in terms of when we see the rhetoric coming out from both the United States and Iran at the moment. Do you see any difference with what we had been seeing perhaps even a couple of days or a week ago as the kind of statements that were being made by the United States? While of course it has made it very clear that the option of military action is still on the table and can be fully exercised, do you think that perhaps the US might have decided to, or at least looked at, other options on the table?
Thank you very much, Sana, for having me on your show. There are quite surprising events in the last couple of days we are witnessing. The tweet of Mr. Trump asked.
Right, I'm unable to hear you, Mr. Hussain. We're going to try and connect once again with Mr. Hussain and try to understand his perspective in terms of what essentially is going on at the moment. It remains a question mark of whether or not the options that are on the table are actually going to be exercised by the United States or not. Mr. Hussain, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can clearly hear you now.
Right, we lost you in the middle. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry, my net connection in Tehran
No
is
worries,
quite
no worries.
unstable, so
Don't worry
I'm
about it.
sorry for that
Not
inconvenience.
at all.
So right now, I believe that the options available to United States would be very much limited in terms of military intervention, since they have already tried what they could try in June 2025, and they don't have any other option like boot on the ground or anything else. So, but at the same time, the Iranian options, since being in the region, are quite extensive and more effective. First of all, they have promised that they will definitely launch their ballistic missile barrages toward Israel, and then
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Hussain. Can you
they
hear me,
are
Mr. Hussain?
using those
Yes,
bases
go
inside your
ahead.
country. Okay, so also they have very clearly stated to the regional countries and to their neighborhood that we are going to barrage our missiles on any American base that are using inside your country. So I believe that the Gulf countries know that if United States attack Iran and use their lands, it would be engulf all the Gulf countries here. And also, I believe the main important case here is Mr. Netanyahu, who directly has asked United States that if Islamic Republic of Iran retaliate and barrages ballistic missiles against Israel, we don't have those much interceptors in Iron Dome to intercept each and every missile of Islamic Republic, and we would. That's why you will have huge losses here. I believe it is not a time for Islamic Republic of Iran that Mr. Trump is providing. It's more a time for Israel to prepare itself much in a better situation.
Right, and Mr. Hussain, when we take a look at the kind of actions that have been taken by the European nations, we've also seen the US also beef up sanctions quite recently. Is that another way you think that the pressure can be increased on Iran, given the fact that it's already a country that's heavily sanctioned and is able to pull through in whatever circumstances? Do you think that more sanctions is going to make it
I hope
difficult for
you
the
can hear
government
me now.
on ground? Yes, I can. Mr. Hussain, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, sorry. Just
Right,
bear
no
with me
worries.
for
My
a few
question,
more minutes like this.
no problem. My question is with regards to the economic sanctions put up by the European nations and a decision already recently taken by the US as well with a country that has been previously heavily sanctioned too. Do you think that that adds to any pressure towards Iran, given the fact that it's a country that has already gone such circumstances, is continuing to do so for quite some time?
Definitely it would, but let me tell you, what is currently unfolding in Iran is a proceeding precisely according to the pre-designed playbook. In this playbook that are designed by United States, first element is putting sanctions and imposing sanctions on Iran, crippling its economy and subjecting its population to collective punishment. In the second element, in a calculated moment, they are going to put the same economical sanctions as an excuse to put people on the streets. On the third element, they are going to launch a massive media campaign and psychological warfare against Iran, projecting to the Western audiences and to those who are under the dominance of the United States and Zionist media that this is all coming from inside country and from the heart of the people, and we have nothing to do. And the fourth element is just intervention, the direct intervention. So I believe right now the direct intervention is a bit, out of their scope. However, Iranians are quite ready for that. But I think again they will put more sanctions to make people more angry against their government.
Right, and Mr. Hussain, when we take a look at what involvement is there by other countries also in terms of helping resolve this diplomatically, or the kind of role that they can play in the future developments as well in case there is a military action, how do you see particularly the role of the Gulf Arab states with regards to the kind of influence they have over the situation? Because, of course, any such possibility against Iran is also a problem and a cause of concern for the larger region as well. So what role do you think that they can play, both in terms of the diplomatic channels being explored at the moment and also in case there is a military action?
United Arab Emirates is one of the most important AI centers of Western companies, particularly the United States in the region. Saudi Arabia is quite a very deep rooted partner with American interests in the region. The Qatar also is hosting one of the biggest American air bases here, and they all can have quite an influence on Mr. Trump. That if you attack Iran and Iran start retaliation by barraging missiles on our soil, our economy and many of our security assurances would be just wiped out of this region, and then you will face a very huge and prolonged war in the region, which neither the United States nor any other country in the region is expecting that. So I believe that Gulf countries can have quite impact on Mr. Trump, and I'm from my own experiences and from my own analysis, I believe they have done so very well. But at the same time, this time that Mr. Trump is waiting, I don't believe it's just for the Gulf countries. It is more from the pressure that Zionist lobbies, especially Mr. Netanyahu himself, is putting on Mr. Trump to hold his military tactics for the moment.
Right. There's also, of course, a look at the actions taken within Iran as well with regards to the domestic engagements and the kind of governance that is being extended. While, of course, the Iranian authorities have made it very clear that the kind of harsh actions, such as hanging, perhaps, that is being discussed is not something that they're going to go ahead with. So in terms of the decisions that they're now taking in light of the kind of focus there is of the entire international community on the current situation, what is Iran's leadership stance and the government's actions in light of this situation to resolve the situation on ground? Mr. Sen, can you hear me? Mr. Sen, we'll wait for what you think on the matter, because this is important, especially in terms of the decisions that the government is going to be taking with regard to how it deems best to handle the situation at home, and what does that represent in terms of then the actions that are going to be guided by other countries, including the United States. While of course there is a lot of talk and there is a lot of rhetoric that is being exchanged, it remains to be seen what really does the Iran leadership do about the matter. Mr. Sen, are you with us?
Yes, yes. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm just like a.
No problem. Don't worry about it. So my question is, with regards to what is happening within Iran, what do you think of the decisions taken by the leadership to resolve the situation, given the fact that the entire international community's focus is on Iran? How do you think that the Iranian leadership has and is going to resolve the situation at home?
First of all, they have already controlled the situation, and I have just spoke about in several interviews that Islamic Republic could very easily nip in the bud all these kind of protests, but this time the government and the supreme leader led the people to just announce their critique against the government, since really this economical condition is quite hard for the people. So I believe, first of all, the Iranian government should put a very huge focus on all its effort to resolving economic challenges by providing better wages and increasing the salary according to the inflation, which is almost 40 to 45%. At the same time, they are going to do a major surgery in Iranian economic by closing the gap between the open market dollar rate exchange and the internal rate exchange, which they are providing to different sectors of their economy. And that creation had the outcome of that creation of huge corruption cases inside Iran. So by closing that gap, I believe the corruption will just reduce in a significant level, and then people can understand and get a better outcome of these outcome of these decisions, especially on the economic sector. But at the confronting with the terrorist elements and all those acts of treason against those who have been participating in creating chaos in Iran, Iranian government would be very much strict, and I believe there would be quite a lot of trials there and court hearing, and then definitely there would be quite of hanging as well.
Right, thank you very much, Mr. Hussain, for joining us and being a part of the newsroom today. There's, of course, a lot happening in terms of both within Iran and the kind of discussions that center around Iran, especially as part of the UN Security Council also, and what the US administration is deciding. But of course, it remains to be seen whether or not a US military action is indeed going to take place. But the option lays on the table, as is being repeatedly underscored by the US authorities. At the same time, we see that many countries are also rushing in for diplomatic channels to be exercised, which some statements point towards the possibility of. We're now going to take a look at our next segment that focuses on what is happening in Afghanistan and the kind of rifts and developments of two major factions as part of the Afghan Taliban that are emerging both in Kandahar and in Kabul. And what do these represent, especially in terms of who leads them, who's the leadership and what the structure is, who the people are, and whether or not both have the kind of influence on the matter, and where exactly does the power lie, and especially in terms of actions that can possibly be taken by the Afghan Taliban regime on the matter, how far will they be willing to go? And this is going to be an important discussion, of course, in terms of what it is that is going to happen, particularly in terms of where the Afghan leadership actually decides to exercise these rights and move ahead with the kind of actions that it needs to take at home. For this, we've been joined by Afeera Firdous, who's an Afghan affairs expert. Thank you very much for joining us and being a part of the discussion. Ms. Afeera, I'd like your take also in terms of, firstly, how do you see the power dynamics in Kandahar versus Kabul? This debate had been part of a lot of discussions for quite some time, and of course recently emerged because of the BBC audio tape too. But in terms of the actual players and those factions that are involved, who do you think truly governs the decisions in Afghanistan right now?
Thank you so much, Sana, for having me. First of all, I guess for the people who have been observing Afghanistan for the past few years, this revelation is not quite very surprising, because since 2021, when Taliban took over Kabul, this was one of the major concerns for international community, that how the two factions, the hardliner Taliban who stayed in Afghanistan for the most part, and the moderate Taliban who were outside in different regions and who have seen war, how the both factions will align. The most obvious part causing this the wedge or rift is, I believe, is the difference in approach from what should the current Taliban look like to the questions of liberties, of women rights and girls' education, their participation in economy, to the role of civil liberties and civil society in Afghanistan, and foreign policy of Afghanistan. But I guess the role of Amir, nobody, I guess, how the ideology or day-to-day matters of Afghan Emirates or this group works, I guess role of Amir is not denied. So I guess the more important question right now is how the both factions see the role of militant actors in Afghanistan. That is what I guess concerns Pakistan most in this situation. So I guess one faction which sees the militant groups like TTP as the ideological partners, and the other faction sees them as the either guests or does not want these groups from engaging in acts of violence against the terror groups. Certainly, I guess if we see the hardline approach, that leaves Afghanistan more vulnerable in the region and forces it to be in perpetual state of conflict with Pakistan and also with their Central Asian neighbors. So I guess to sum this whole thing, this wedge is not just about the approach Afghanistan should take, but also this will also determine whether the country wants to have a neighborhood of durable peace or perpetual conflict.
Right, but Afeera, in terms of the possibilities and options at the table, how far do you think, especially the Afghan faction in Kabul, is going to go ahead in terms of their actions against Kandahar? It seems that previously also we haven't really seen all-out actions being taken, despite the fact that many decisions or spheres of influence were being communicated from Kandahar, especially with regards to the internet shutdown recently. And so in terms of the actual action that can be taken within these factions, what is the extent of that you think that is possible within Afghanistan and its dynamics?
I guess that's debatable because because as I already mentioned that if we see the ideology, the obedience of Amir is one of the most significant part, but we have already seen such rifts in the past. This is not completely unusual for Afghan Taliban to take a pronounced or divergent approach. If I can quote one example from the past, one of the most significant rift occurred when Mullah Umar died and Mullah Mansour took over the leadership, and that was announced by the Rahbari Shura. So several Taliban commanders, including Mullah Umar's son, who is currently the defense minister of Afghanistan, rejected Mansour's leadership and walked out of the leadership meeting in protest. But later on, the disagreements were settled down. So I guess it's not completely out of question, but definitely if regional countries are looking at this situation, they could interpret the situation the current rift in different ways. First of all, this shows to the regional partners that Taliban interim government is not monolith entity, and you have several camps to deal with or to work with if you are engaging with Afghanistan right now. On one hand, one group wants to project power outside, like against countries like Pakistan by propping TTP as their ideological proxies. Secondly, it tells us some groups see it as detrimental to the country's peace because they look at the region differently, and they want some kind of economic engagement or limited modernization in Afghanistan. So I guess um, so. This is how I see the whole situation
Right.
in this regard.
Right, and who do you think has more support, especially in terms of the public and the kind of followers they have and the kind of differences in their decision making or what they think should be the future of Afghanistan? Where is the opinion of the people factored in? Who do you think that they want to see in power more? Ms. Afeera, can you hear me?
Can you please repeat your question? I guess I lost you.
No problem. My question is, which faction do you think has more support of the people, especially given the fact that they have different ideas about what the future of Afghanistan should look like? So which faction do you think has more support of the people of Afghanistan?
So I guess if we see Kabul faction, they are a little bit moderate. They want to engage with the war, and they also publicly stated that women should have restricted rights of education and work. And but again, I mentioned earlier that right now power is with Kandahar group, and if we see the developments from past few months, Kandahar faction is taking out bits and pieces of power from a couple, previously the defense equipment and arms were under Kabul group, but lately those were transferred to the Amir's faction and people closer to Amir. So I guess power is right now with the Kandahar group, but if people of Afghanistan are concerned, I guess they would look more towards right now towards the Mullah Brothers group who are sitting in Kabul because they have a bit of open-mindedness and a sense of moderation in current circumstances.
Right. And so, Afeera, this brings me to another question that does the will of the people even matter, or is being factored in the decision making that the leadership in Afghanistan is taking? Because when we talk about how some people, of course, are supporting the moderate stances and policies, that is something, of course, especially when we talk about, for example, the rights to education and working for women has been a demand that has existed and has been there, but unfortunately the ban continues. And so where does this factor in terms of the decision makers really truly incorporating this in their stances? And do they have any real pressure coming in from what the people want?
I guess maybe not right now, but eventually, I guess with this kind of hardline approach, the patience will run thin, certainly. Um, um, uh, uh, Apart from pressure from Afghan people, I guess there is another concern that the leadership the leadership of Afghan Taliban will have to see that if this internal rift between Taliban leadership is continued for certain time, this will definitely empower militant groups like ISKP in the region, in Afghanistan, and in the broader region of South Asia. So, which will detrimental for not only Afghan leadership, but also for the region on whole. So I guess these are few factors that Taliban must be looking at right now.
Right, and Fira, when we take a look at the Akhundzada-led Kandahar group, why do you think that the group or its leadership decides to restrict its presence in that region only? Of course, the influence may trickle down to other parts, including in Kabul. But in terms of actions that they can take or that they may think are necessary, do you think that there's any particular reason why such a strategy framework has been put in place for them to be looking at the situation from Kandahar and not actually going ahead and taking a more direct leadership role in Kabul?
I guess how I see is this question. I guess this is certainly how the governance, the Amir looks at the governance levels. I guess he feels more secure in probably in Kandahar, and because previously Mullah. The son of Mullah Omar, he was very close to Khanzada, the current Amir, and the Siraj Haqqani's son. Siraj Haqqani himself was very close to he is. So I guess he let these people go to Kabul and deal with the governance issues. So I guess this is more about his own security purposes as well. But if the rift stays, I guess he might consider going to, or the close associates of Amir might consider going to Kabul in a few months.
Right. And Afeera, what do you think these rifts do to how the international community is viewing Afghanistan and how they're dealing with the Afghan Taliban regime? With the BBC reporting on this recent audio tape and the Afghan leadership not truly denying its presence, what really do you think the effect is on how the international community can interact with the Afghan Taliban regime?
So as far as international community in the closer region, I guess China and Russia are interacting with Taliban. Recently, Taliban ambassador was present in Moscow, and China has been in 2024 and 2025 closely dealing with different delegations from Afghan Taliban. But these rifts inside their leadership, they will also push the regional actors away from Afghanistan. What I see from Afghan Taliban's mindset, they want some kind of dealing, or they want some kind of connection with US, and I guess US will eventually have to exert some kind of pressure to deal with Taliban's internal.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Afeera, for joining us and being a part of the discussion today. There is a lot of focus on what happens inside Afghanistan and how exactly the situation is going to move forward. We'll take a short break here and be back with more news looking at what happens in Gaza. Welcome back to the newsroom with Sana. We're now going to take a look at what is happening inside Gaza and the kind of decisions that are being made by the United States in particular with regards to what the future is going to look like. And the U.S. has announced that the second phase of the U.S. brokered ceasefire is going to be moved ahead with. And this is, of course, a cause of concern, especially for those that have spoken about how the first phase is not fully implemented and is needed to implement the next phase in full letter and spirit. And so the decisions with regards to what really is going to be the future and how successful the first phase is are important aspects to be discussed, and especially in terms of what a Palestinian Authority is going to look like, what the 15-member body as part of the technocratic committee that has been announced by the US is going to do, and how that's going to be a contribution to what is happening within Gaza remains to be seen. For that, we've been joined by Osama Nazzal, who's a Palestinian affairs expert. Thank you, Osama, for being part of the newsroom. I'd like your perspective in terms of how you see the announcement of the second phase. We've discussed many times, even on my show, with reference to what is the current situation of the first phase, especially in terms of many aspects, including ceasefire violations that have taken place, including the fact that the Rafah crossing wasn't open, the fact that humanitarian aid is still not let in. And so when these aspects of the first phase are not met, it puts into question the success of the first phase. Is this, do you think, the right call to move on to the second phase at this point in time?
Yeah, the start of the second phase is not promising, really, as once the American official Witkoff announced the start of the second phase, Israel started its severe aggression against the Palestinian citizens in Gaza. We all know that just yesterday, Israel carried out a airstrike, killing a number of Palestinian citizens when they targeted a Palestinian family house there. And today, the same mantra continued. Israel attacked Gaza and killed and injured a number of Palestinians, which means that Israel is continuing its conduct of violating the agreement, just like what it did during the first phase. As during the first phase of Trump plan, Israel killed 450 Palestinians and injured 1,200 others, in addition to preventing access of a humanitarian aid. Is the situation going to be different during the second stage? Really, I have doubt over that.
Right. And Osama, when we take a look at the kind of actions that have also been taken in terms of the technocratic committee, it is a 15-member body, and we understand that the one of the former ministers of the Palestinian Authority is going to be leading it. How do you look at these decisions, who all are going to be part of this committee, and whether or not they can bring about any change to the current situation in terms of the administrative aspects required at the moment, and then bringing in the next steps of the Board of Peace and, of course, moving forward with the ISF?
Yeah, of course, the different Palestinian factions have blessed this committee and its members on the premise that the existence and work of this committee is going to be temporary. as it's going to pave the way for the handover of the whole situation of Gaza to the Palestinian government, to the Palestinian Authority, in order to connect Gaza with the rest of the Palestinian land occupied in 1967. I mean, East Jerusalem and all of the West Bank. Is Israel going to enable this committee to do its function? That is the question. Are the Americans going to be serious enough to put the pressure on the Israeli prime minister and his government to allow this committee to function as it is planned, and after that to hand over Gaza to the Palestinian Authority and have all of the Palestinian land connected towards serious negotiations that would lead to the resolution of the Palestinian cause? I mean, the establishment of the Palestinian state and end the conflict. Are we going to see that? As long as we have this Israeli policy, this Israeli attitude, I don't think that we are going on the right track, because Israel is bombing Gaza, Israel is killing the people in the West Bank, Israel is taking over more land, and there is no serious talk about peace with the Palestinians.
Do you think that the countries who have expressed willingness to contribute to the ISF are going to go ahead and do so given the current circumstances?
The mediators and all the countries involved have tried to convince the Americans to force Israel to abide by the terms of the agreement during the first phase, but they failed, because what is required is tangible pressure on the Israeli occupation government in order to commit it to the terms and conditions of the agreement. But to give statements and like soft intervention without, telling the Americans that the situation can't continue like this and there is need to put the pressure on their friends in Tel Aviv, I don't think that the situation is promising, because the Americans refuse to use any kind of a pressure on Israel, especially there is a much interest connecting the American administration with the Israeli occupation government, as they agree on one plan, not only in regards to the Palestinian occupied territories, but it seems that they agree on the whole situation in the Middle East, as if the Americans are seeing Netanyahu the future military ruler of the whole region, not only Palestine.
Right. And Osama, given the current circumstances, an important aspect, of course, is humanitarian aid that needs to be allowed in as well. Do you think that that will be formed as part of whatever phase that we're entering in and the kind of focus there is on Gaza? Will that at least have some respite given the current involvement of the different countries?
First of all, the fact that the Israeli occupation and its supporters, the American administration in this case, the fact that they connect the humanitarian aid with the political situation is shame on the forehead of the international community, because there should be a separation between what the Palestinian children in Gaza and the Palestinian women need in terms of food, water, medicine, and reconstruction of their houses. This should not be connected with the political situation. I mean that the Palestinian children in Gaza and their mothers should not suffer and bear the brunt of the political situation and the political goals that Israel and the American administration are working to realize. We also, the Palestinian children in Gaza, dying because of cold, because they are frozen to death, as they have no blankets, they have no tents, they have no infrastructure at all in Gaza. Keeping silent on this situation in order to reach your political goal is really slap in the face of humanity and the human civilization.
Right. And Osama, when we take a look at the kind of involvement that there can be, particularly coming in from the US, especially when we take a look at mechanisms now as part of this technocratic committee and what is going to be a future Palestinian Authority and then the Board of Peace that Mr. Trump is chairing, what really do you think will be the sphere of influence of these elements and now the 15-member body that has just been formed, and the ways in which that will guide and shape the future of any Palestinian Authority? How do we bring in the representation of the people of Palestine in this and ensure that that, in fact, is how the future is being laid down?
Look, if the international community were serious, if the Americans, the Israelis, and all the parties involved were serious about a just solution for the Palestinian matter, there would have not needed any kind of committees or any kind of interim administration of Gaza. They would have handed over everything to the Palestinian Authority and the Palestinian government as the representative of the Palestinian people, and ended this situation and started a new chapter of the Israeli-Palestinian relationship. But the fact that the American administration is condoning the Israeli colonial policies, they went to the other choice, to have this committee in order not to have real and genuine representation of the Palestinian Authority. And when I say the Palestinian Authority, I mean, of course, the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people. So is Israel going to implement everything in relation to this administrative committee, or it's going to thwart its work and to turn it from a temporary body into a permanent body at the expense of the PLO and the Palestinian Authority, to keep the Palestinian land divided into enclaves and end any possibility for Palestinian statehood? Is the international community going to allow Israel to do that or not? If we look at the international balance of power today and what's happening in the Middle East and even in Europe in terms of Greenland, Ukraine, and other parts of the world, I think there is nothing to be optimistic about.
Right. And Osama, what part of the aspects with regards to Hamas are going to be also factored in when we take a look at what is happening, and how do we differentiate those elements from any future Palestinian Authority? Because Hamas, of course, essentially is not just a group of people, it's also the ideology that is part of the larger fabric. So how will that be separated, and how truly will be a demilitarized area going to be achieved, as is being quoted to be part of the second phase? Will that be an easy step forward, given the fact that the first phase ceasefire was not truly respected?
We need to understand that the issue here is not Hamas. The issue is Israel, because the ball is in the Israeli court. Is Israel going to allow things to pass it smoothly in accordance with the plan that the Palestinian factions and the Palestinians accepted or not? The fact that Israel carried out its airstrike yesterday against Gaza and continuing its aggression today against Gaza and expanding this aggression in the West Bank. Just hours ago, Israel allowed its settlers to storm into the Palestinian village of Al-Mughayr near Ramallah and killed a 16-year-old Palestinian child and damaged Palestinians' houses in that village. This is part of the Israeli daily conduct against the Palestinians. Is Israel going to stop this conduct and give an opportunity for peace or not? That is the question that we have on mind. Concerning Hamas, Hamas agreed that the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian government, take over the whole situation in Gaza. But is Israel going to allow the Palestinian Authority to get to that point or not? I think not, because the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu statements are clear that he doesn't want to see the PA governing Gaza, and he is weakening the PA in the West Bank.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Osama Nazzal, for joining us and being a part of this day. There's a lot of questions that still remain in terms of how exactly the second phase can begin and be put in place, where the success of the first one is still being questioned. But it is an essential way forward in terms of achieving what is required as part of both the first and second phases, and to have more administrative control of what the situation is on ground, to allow aid to come in Gaza, and to, of course, essentially make sure that there is a ceasefire in place so that the ISF and other bodies as part of the second phase can truly function to deliver what they've been formed to do so. That's all that we have from the newsroom today. We'll now see you tomorrow.